All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of boring stuff that no one cares about. Uh, Remember my last video? I say most, if you're coming to the channel, and you're wondering why I'm doing this talking thing and there's no D&D in there. Well, most of what I do is D&D. And then I also said something to the effect of, oh, and also I talk about business every so often. I'm going to talk about business. For those you don't know, I have a bachelor's degree in business marketing management. I have a degree in business, and unions are actually one of the topics that I am most kind of passionate about as far as business is concerned, for two reasons. One, I was actually forced to join a union. I was forced to join the cashiers union at the grocery store that I worked at. Now, for those of you wondering why cashiers need a union, I can tell you right now, they don't. And that particular union, because when I was working there, Wisconsin, where I lived at the time, where I still live, Wisconsin was not a what's called right to work state, which basically means, and a lot of people don't understand how union works in general. But in non right to work states, basically what happens is if a group decides to unionize, they only need 51% of the employees to agree to unionize, and then all of the employees are forced to be a part of the union. Their dues are taken out before they even see their paycheck, so they have no choice about whether or not they get to pay their dues. They no longer have any say in their contract, because the contract is negotiated by your union reps. So you no longer have any say in what is in your contract. And if the union, if you are in some way mistreated or anything like that, there's nothing that you personally can do. It has to be the union, which a lot of times people that support unions a lot will go, well, that's a good thing, because one person making a complaint is not that big a deal, but if the entire, if they threaten to strike, theoretically, yes, if that's the way it worked, that would be a good thing. The truth about it is unions do not stick up for all their members. They never have. They never will. And so if your union doesn't really care about you, and if you want to know about a union that doesn't care about some of its members, talk to any music teacher. Because, let me tell you, the teachers union does not give a shit about music teachers. And it never has. So, yeah. And basically what happened with the cashiers union was it effectively, I went from a non-union, because I just transferred stores, because I'd moved. And so I went from a non-union job where I was one of the better cashiers, mostly because I was young and stupid and thought that working hard meant that I would get paid better. It didn't. And working for a grocery store chain is not a good job. But I took pride in my work, and I was really good. Like, I memorized most of my PLUs, and I would always clean my register. Like, I did all the things I was supposed to, and I would help out around the store as well. Like, if I had no customers at my register, per my contract, all I was required to do was sit on my ass and clean things every so often in the front, maybe organize the candy. But I would go, hey, there's nobody in the store. Can I go help stock shelves or something like that? Because it was just more fun. Because sitting on my ass in a grocery store is boring. So I go from there. I go to this place is the union shop. No one does shit there. And when I say no one does shit, I mean that. Every single cashier did not clean their belts. They did not organize their candy. They did nothing but sit on their chair, because every one of them had a little stool behind their register, They'd sat on their chair and read magazines or stared off into, the inevitable patheticness of their life, and did literally nothing. They barely interacted with customers. They were just remarkably bad at their job. And the thing that was the tipping point for me was we had a union board in our break room, which is where the union rep, whom I never actually met, I paid them, but I have no idea who they were. That would put up all the notifications. And I came in, and there was a big old letter in there. It's from our union rep. Or no, it wasn't from our union rep. It was from the store management themselves, and it was an apology. Because what had happened is one of the cashiers had come into work late, and they'd been written up because of how late they were. The union went and chewed out the management, and said, "You're not allowed to do that. We are in charge of disciplining our union members. You have to apologize, and you have to tear up that write-up." So quite literally, it was in her contract that she had to show up at a certain time, and the penalties were in there as well. Weren't allowed to do that. The union decided that they weren't allowed to do that. Did not help anyone. Everyone hated working there. And when I did put my 2 weeks in, I remember one person in particular that I'd shared quite a few shifts with, because I was in college at the time, and so I think I worked the night shifts because I had classes during the day, because I wasn't smart enough to schedule my classes at night. And so anyway, what ended up happening was, as soon as I put my 2 weeks in, it was getting close to the end of my 2 weeks, and I just go, "Oh yeah, well, hey, it's been fun. I don't think we're gonna work together again." She goes, "What?" I go, "Oh, I'm gone. My last day is like Friday." I said, "But you're one of the good ones." I go, "What?" You're like, "You're one of the only people that actually does their job. Like, every time I come in, the person has left the register a mess. Like, it takes an extra like 15 minutes every time I start, because the person before me didn't do any of the work that they were supposed to, and management has no control over it." So yeah, the union absolutely, all it did was create bad workers in that particular instance. That's not how all unions work. And then the other reason why unions are a big deal to me is because I actually wrote a paper and and actually did a presentation on unions and right to work laws as part of my degree. And fun fact, unions are what is it called? They aren't taxed. They're not charities, but they're non-taxed entities. There's a word that I can't think of right now. Anyway, they don't pay taxes. And up until, I want to say it was like 2012, it might have been 2010, but somewhere around there, up until that point, unions actually weren't required to disclose where any of the funds that they brought in went. Any other tax exempt, that's what it is. Any other tax exempt thing, whether you're a charity, whether you're a religious organization, whatever, you actually have to file paperwork, and you actually have to show where all of your money goes. Now, you don't have to get into absolute minute details with every receipt ever shown, but you have to go, this much went to payroll, this went to this went to that, and you actually have to produce that every single year. It's a requirement by law. Unions for decades were not required to do that, but they still had tax exempt status. And so eventually a law got through that said, no, unions, you're not allowed to just hide all the money that you take from people. You got to show us where it goes. And so a couple years before I had to do, before I went back to college and I had to do this presentation and actually study them, the numbers finally started coming out, and people found out a lot of things like unions don't actually, most unions, I'm not talking about all of them, most unions, upwards of 90%, do not actually help any of the workers. The people that benefit from a union are the union leaders, whom that is their job, not like, the guy that started the union, but the guy that gets paid by the union to do things. They're the union head, the union leaders, where they don't have another day job. That is their job. they get paid amazing amounts, especially in non-right-to-work states. They get like 60 to 80% higher salaries than union leaders in right-to-work states. And so most of your dues goes towards paying your union leader. It doesn't actually translate to you getting better pay. The difference in pay on average is roughly about 3%, whether you belong to a union in a right-to-work state versus not right-to-work, which is what the comparison I did was, because right-to-work law had just passed in Wisconsin. The actual change of like a union member versus a non-union member in the same kind of job field, I believe is around like anywhere between 3 to 5%. It's not a massive amount, and places where unions do have union shops, non-right-to-work states, and that generally also have higher unemployment rates of about 3 to 5%. So yes, some people do make a little more money, but the way they get that money is by firing other people and just taking that money and spreading it around. So less people work for slightly more money, and then your dues go directly to your union head and to lobbying efforts to stop states from passing right-to-work laws. Like, that's entirely, like, if you belong to most unions, that is what your union dues are paying for. You are paying to lobby the government. So you are literally paying extra money to your senators and representatives, and you are paying your union boss to get paid generally like 3, 4, 5 times as much as you do for doing relatively little amount of work. For most unions, I'm not saying this is all unions. You may belong to a really, really great union. One of the things that I found out when I was researching unions is there's actually quite a few union bosses in right-to-work states that prefer to operate in right-to-work states, because all right-to-work means is not that unions can't form, is that unions can't compel membership. So remember when I mentioned in non-right-to-work states, if 51% of the employees decide that they want to unionize, all of you unionize. It doesn't matter if you don't want to or not, you have to. That's what's called compelled membership. And they take the dues out of your check before you ever see it. So you can't withhold your dues or anything. You never touch that money. It's taken out at the same time your taxes are. In right-to-work states, unions still exist. However, you actually get a choice of whether or not you want to belong to a union. And no business can require membership in a union for employment. There are a few caveats to that. I believe public sector workers, I think, can get around that, because I know teachers unions still exist in right-to-work states, and you are still required to belong to the teachers unions to work in most places. And I think a lot of like the post office, I think, is unionized, and it tends to be a closed shop. So there are actually quite a few union bosses that actually prefer right-to-work states, because it forces the union to actually do their job. And you actually have to be able to incentivize people to join the union. And so generally unions in right-to-work states are extremely, are much stronger and tend to support their workers a lot better, because if they're not supporting their workers, they just quit and they don't get their dues anymore. For those of you wondering why they're allowed to compel membership, well, according to, I think it's the Fair Labor Standards Act, if you are in a union, you are not allowed to negotiate special deals for only your members. You are not allowed to say, you are not allowed to work out a deal with the employer where it's like, well, anyone that joins my union gets an extra $1 an hour in pay or anything like that. There are reasons behind this. I do not remember them. Again, I learned it back in college, and because of how bad my my memory is from the medication they put me on. I don't remember the justification as to why that is, but there actually is a decent justification. And so the argument against right to work is like, well, the other people are just freeloading then because they get better contracts when the union, because the union has to negotiate for everyone, but then they're not paying for it. Doesn't actually work that way. Again, most unions really don't do that much for their union members. Oh, I'm gonna tell you guys a secret. Even if you're not unionized, you all make the same amount of money. So union or no union, most companies, especially entry level, pay all their people the same. Like there's a starting pay, and that's what everybody makes. And if you have a certain requirement, that may bump up your starting pay. But that's it. Almost every business in the world works exactly like that. Like they already pay people about the same. And then there's certain people that understand how negotiation works and are actually good at their job that can negotiate better pay. And that upsets some people. Partially because understanding how to negotiate is not a job skill that a lot of people need to do their job. So basically, to get paid what you're worth, you have to learn an entirely different job skill from what you are already a master of. So a lot of people don't like that, and there are some people that just really aren't good at negotiations. Like it is a skill. It is not just something that absolutely everyone can do intrinsically. No, you have to learn how to do it, and it requires a little bit of insight. It requires the ability to read body language. It requires a good head for business. And it requires a good ability to communicate well. And there are a lot of jobs where those particular skills are not used that much. And so being forced to learn this entirely different set of skills just to get paid what you're worth seems like a pain in the ass. So anyway, why are we talking about unions 17 minutes into this video? Well, there's been some drama. I'm not here to talk about the drama. I'm here to explain how a business works, because a lot of people don't. And I actually have a player in one of my games that I went on a little rant, and they were very upset over this drama. And I said, it's not, people are blowing this way out of proportion. It's not that big a deal, and I can tell you exactly why it went the way it did. It was because the people involved did stupid things. That's exactly what it was. It's not like the company is this evil, horrible company that just likes to take their employees and... Companies like that don't last. That's not how companies work. If your goal is to exploit your labor force, you will close generally within about 2 to 3 years. There's tons of studies on this. We know this for a fact. That's not how companies work. Despite the fact that that's how people on the bottom think it works, it has never worked that way. It will never work that way. That's not how you make money. So, what is it? So anyway, this player of mine really wanted me to make a video out of this because they felt that I explained it relatively well to them, and they like other people. They'd like a place to point them. So I'm going to talk about unions. I'm going to talk about Mob Psycho 100 and why Crunchyroll decided to recast, which, in my personal opinion, was 100% the right decision. And I'll tell you why in a little bit here. So a little bit of background. Crunchyroll, if you don't know, they are, I think they might be the biggest anime dubber currently in the North American market. I might be wrong. There's a couple others, but they recently merged with Funimation, which was... It used to be Crunchyroll, Funimation, and I know there's at least one other. And they were big companies that did all the dubbing for everything. And so Crunchyroll and Funimation have merged recently, which upset a lot of people. And to be perfectly honest, I'm surprised that the merger was allowed. Because what is it? Monopoly laws, which was another thing that I had to learn in business school. That again, I can't remember what any of them are called. Antitrust. There we go. Antitrust laws, the Sherman Antitrust Act, and stuff like that. It seems really, really weird that the FCC would allow the merger with just how large of a market share that they were putting together. But I did not look at the deal very closely, so obviously there had to be something in there. I'm not saying the FCC is not FCC. That's communications. FTC, Federal Trade Commission. There we go. FTC. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not saying that they're the most amazing, blameless organization. No, they let a lot of horrible, bullshitty, monopolistic stuff go through all the time. But this to me, it just felt really, really weird that two massive companies were able to merge like that. But who knows? The paperwork went through, and so they're merging a lot of their stuff. And so recently, one of the voice actors, which I don't watch Mob Psycho 100, so I'm not familiar with any of the characters or anything like that. But apparently, there's been 2 seasons of it. It's apparently a fantastic anime. And one of the voice actors for one of the lead characters, whom shall remain nameless, mostly because I can't remember names, made a video talking about why there's a good chance that he was not going to be voicing the character in season 3. And he made, and I watched the entire video. If I can find it again, I will probably put a link to it in the description just so you guys can watch it too. But he talked about why he was dropping it, and the big reason behind it was he's a SAG AFTRA member. Those of you that are unaware, SAG AFTRA is technically it is 2 unions that were merged into one. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, and SAG used to be exclusive to people that worked in the film industry, and then AFTRA is the American Federation of Television somethings, but it was the union for people that worked in television. So they actually film actors and TV actors were actually not only just like 2 separate groups that kind of used to fight with each other, where it's like, well, film acting is real acting, television acting is for plebeians, and then television actors was like, ha 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 ha, you work for what? You work for a month and a half and then have a year off. Ha ha! I work for 3 months to make stuff that runs for like 18 hours. Your movie barely lasts 2. Like there used to be this huge rivalry. It's not as big anymore. Theater and film actors still like to go at it, but it's not as big. And so eventually SAG and AFTRA merged together. They are now SAG AFTRA. SAG AFTRA is effectively the actors union, or the film actors union, because theater actors have their own union called Equity. So everyone that works on Broadway and all that, they're all members of Equity. So SAG AFTRA is the actors union, and voice actors can join SAG AFTRA. This guy that I can't remember his name, he's a member of SAG, and Crunchyroll is not what's called a union shop. They don't exclusively hire union workers, which with how SAG AFTRA works is a requirement. Normally, is a requirement for you to be able to use SAG actors at all. A standard contract for SAG AFTRA, at least how it was when I was trying to get my SAG card, was if there was a union actor in your show, you were required by contract to exclusively use SAG actors. You were not allowed to hire outside of the SAG AFTRA pool, other than, and there was always this little clause in there, if you physically could not find enough SAG people where you were shooting in order to do it, you were allowed a small percentage of your lower roles. Extras, things like that, were allowed to be non-SAG members. But for the most part, everyone has to be SAG. It is effectively a closed shop. California, not a right-to-work state, and that is where SAG AFTRA is located in Hollywood. So even if the work is happening, like if the show is shooting in Georgia, which is where a lot of television is shot right now, or anything like that, a lot of dubbing and stuff like that actually happens in California, which is a non-right to work state. So they're allowed to impose closed shops. You have to be a member of the union. So, and the unique thing is when a company first unionizes, once they get that 51%, they can't not let you join the union if you already work for the company. Once the union is formed, they can refuse you membership into the union, which means you can't get the job there after the union is formed. And that's how SAG works. SAG, getting your SAG card is remarkably difficult and complicated. Effectively, in order to get your SAG card, you have to get 3 vouchers. And the way that you get a SAG voucher is you have to actually be cast and credited in a SAG production. However, as I mentioned before, SAG productions are closed shops. If you don't belong to the Screen Actors Guild, you're not allowed to be in a SAG production. And that's where that little thing on the bottom says, oh, by the way, if you can't get enough people, you're allowed to hire 5% of your workforce is allowed to be non-union, but you have to prove that you tried to hire union actors first. And so that's how most people go about getting their SAG card, is they go somewhere and they just keep trying and trying and trying to get a bit part 3 times, generally as a background extra or something like that, in 3 different SAG productions, so that then they can apply to become a part of the Screen Actors Guild. And then before you can get in, again, years ago when I was trying to get my SAG card, you have to pay your yearly dues up front, which for SAG, the dues were, I think it was $1,000 when I was doing it. I have no idea what the dues are now, but I remember like a decade ago or something, when I was trying to be an actor, you had to pony up $1,000 up front to apply, and then you get your SAG card. And getting your SAG card opened a lot of doors, because most agents in Hollywood, or in California in general, but specifically in Hollywood, will not represent you if you don't have your SAG card already. And again, you have access to a lot more parts. You can get speaking roles. Like, having a SAG card is really, really useful. So this actor talks about, well, I thought it would be a good idea to get them to do the next season, because they're doing a season 3, the next season, under a SAG contract. And so, according to what I remember from what he said, again, I'm going to link it in the comments below, so if I'm misrepresenting things, you're more than welcome to tell me. This is what I got from it. From what I understand from what he said, he went to the people at Crunchyroll and said, hey, I'd like to sit you down with with a SAG rep, and I'd like you to talk to them about getting a SAG contract in here instead of working on the contracts we already have. And he specifically stated that he kind of put his participation in season 3 contingent on this. That's mistake number 1. You don't do that. Especially not if you're a voice actor. We'll get into that in a second. And they said no. And he specifically says in his video, it wasn't about the money. They are already paying at the same rate that SAG pays. So it's not like they're being underpaid or anything like that. He specifically stated, I'm already getting paid what I would get paid under SAG. So it's not that, this idea of, well, they just don't want to pay them what they're worth. No, actually, that's they're already getting paid what they would. And that's actually a remarkably common thing for non-union shops to do, just because it's remarkably difficult to figure out what to actually pay people, because what you pay people is not actually has anything to do with the value of the work that they give you. It is a remarkably complicated process. And so looking at what the industry standard is, which the industry standard is decided upon by SAG, is a remarkably common thing to do. And a lot of non-union shops will start at whatever the union is doing and try to go a little below that because they can. But it's generally not a great idea. So a lot of places, even if they're not using union members, will stick pretty close to what a union already is. Otherwise, they risk losing their employees to the union or encouraging their employees to unionize, neither of which tends to work out very well in the long run for the business. So he said quite plainly in the video, it wasn't about the money. He wanted the additional protections of the union, the additional protections, which we're going to talk about in a second here. And at that point, it hadn't been announced whether or not he was going to be asked to come back for season 3. They had not announced casting decisions or anything like that. But he'd gone to Twitter and he had said, this, I want to get everyone out there because public pressure is a real thing. And the voice actor strike back in 2016, the reason it was as successful as it was, which it wasn't phenomenally successful, but it did kind of work. It did make things a little bit better. It wasn't great, but things were better. One of the reasons why it worked as well as it did, compared to something like the Writers Guild strike back in the late 80s or 90s, I want to say. There's a big Writers Guild strike. Nobody knew it happened. And I believe they got most of what they wanted, but people really could care less. And a lot of TV shows and things like that suffered a lot because people had no idea what was going on. They were just mad that they weren't getting more episodes of what they wanted. There was another strike, I don't know, 2008, something like that, 2009, somewhere in there, 2010. And a similar thing happened. But public pressure, using Twitter and stuff, the Writers Guild, or the voice actor strike in 2016, they used social media, and it was a lot more effective than previous strikes and things like that. And it gave them a lot more power. And so in an attempt to use a similar format, the voice, this guy decided to make this video and put it out on Twitter and stuff like that, trying to drum up the same amount of support. The problem with that being, not all people are created equal in the eyes of the union. And I'm going to explain that. So, one of my favorite shows when I was a kid was a show called Sliders. It was super cool. Jerry O'Connell was in it. What's his name? John Rhys-Davies was in it. They were brilliant together. And it's basically about this kid that developed the ability to travel to alternate dimensions, where it was basically like one thing did a difference, and that thing led to. It was a really cool premise for a series. The first series is actually really good. The first season is actually really good. The second season, they started getting a little bit more. Basically, what happened was producers and executives started forcing the writers to do things like TV parodies and movie parodies. Like there was one that was 100% ripped off from Jurassic Park, like because they always traveled around San Francisco. Because that's just how the technology worked. Anytime they slid into a new dimension, it was always in San Francisco. Well, in this particular world, San Francisco was a wildlife preserve for dinosaurs. So the writing got worse and worse and worse. Well, season 3 comes around, and they were cutting a lot of corners. And a stuntman was killed during a botched stunt with a Jeep. I think the Jeep flipped or something like that, but it ended up killing a stuntman. Stunt actors, I don't know if they were then. I think they were. I know they are now. Stunt actors are members of the Screen Actors Guild. The Screen Actors Guild could not give two shits about their stuntmen. And despite the fact that this stuntman died, if an actor had died because of a bad stunt or something like that, production would have been shut down. The series would have been canceled. There would have been huge things. Sliders went on for another 2 seasons. 2 really god-awful seasons. Sliders went on for another 2 seasons. There was very little, like, I didn't find out somebody died on it until 20 years later when I was just looking up old stuff about Sliders because I hadn't seen it in a while. And I was like, oh man, I wonder if I can stream it anywhere, because it was the first 2 seasons were great. They were fun. And Jerry O'Connor was a really great actor. So is John Rhys Davies, and they worked really well together. The rest of the cast was really good too. I just can't remember any of their names, because again, I'm bad with names. So yeah, Screen Actors Guild could not give 2 shits about stunt actors. They still do not treat them remarkably well. Have you ever heard about a stunt actor's boycotts or a stunt actor's strike or anything? No. The voice actors strike was huge because up until 2016, the Screen Actors Guild didn't give 2 shits about their voiceover artists. Now, one of the reasons why they generally don't care about certain aspects, and this is true about all unions, is certain union members get you more money than others. Your union dues, a lot of times, are not a flat fee. They're based on, a lot of times they're based on how much you're making, because the union will claim that the reason you're making that much money is entirely due to the union. It's not true, but that's what they will claim. So people that make less money, voice actors being one of them, compared to traditional live action actors, voice actors make bupkis. But recently it's been getting bigger and bigger. And so voice actors are making decent amounts of money. And the most important part, live action actors are becoming voice actors. This started way back when Robin Williams voiced the genie in Aladdin. Generally what happened was voice actors, real actors, did not do voiceover. Voiceover was for children, cartoons and stuff like that was for children and for people that couldn't get real acting jobs. That wasn't real acting. All you're doing is talking into a microphone. When Robin Williams did Aladdin, it showed not only does doing live action acting or in front of camera acting actually translate really well to voiceover work, but it massively changed how animated movies could be marketed and how animated movies could be cast, to be perfectly honest, because one of the reasons why quite a few actors become as big as they are is because they are remarkably good. Robin Williams is a brilliant actor. And him doing the genie changed the movie completely. Most of his dialogue was improvised. They stopped writing dialogue for him because the stuff that Robin Williams improvised was just better. So generally he would get pages and he would barely read what was on the page. He would just be doing all this other stuff and they would animate around it, and it turned into a really cool character. And that started the influence of traditional actors actually taking roles. Quasimodo was played by, I can't remember. He played Mozart and Amadeus, and I can't remember the dude's name, but he's a prolific actor. Obviously, James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones had done a lot of different things, but James Earl Jones did Mufasa. You started seeing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger names getting into animation. Well, by the time 2016 had got around, not only had voice actors been getting bigger and bigger roles, but video game voice actors had started to become a really, really big deal. Critical Role helped that because Matt Mercer... Critical Role became this huge phenomenon, and it catapulted Matt Mercer, whom already was a really big name in voiceover and voice acting in general, because he was in everything. And Laura Bailey, who again was already a really big name in the voiceover community because she'd done work on Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that. And so she was already a huge, and she'd done Full Metal Alchemist and all those other things. She was a huge name. And it just catapulted her even higher, and video games are being regarded. So the voice actor, voice actor strike in 2016 was a really, really big deal. But don't think for a minute they would have done that for anime dubs. They don't care about anime dubs. First of all, because anime dubs don't really get paid well, and therefore don't make the union a whole lot of money. They're not very well. They're not very well recognized. Like, again, there are big names: Johnny Young Bosch, Matt Mercer, Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham. Those are names that show up fairly often in anime dubs, and people that are into anime know them. The rest of the world could care less. And so, going back to what this voice actor did, where he said, "Well, if you don't meet with the union, then I'm not gonna be a part of the next thing." Putting your low-paying job that there is a very large market for people to fill your place on the line, basically to tell your boss that, and the way that it was pitched was the other way that was really dumb. Basically, tell your boss that they're the bad guy, and if your boss doesn't let the good guys come in and save the business, and save all the poor people that they're exploiting, that you're going to just quit. That's a really dumb way to try and get change made. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again. If you paint your employer as the bad guy, and in general, that's what unions do. It's one of the easiest ways to get union members is they go, "Your business is trying to exploit you. We would never exploit you. We work for you. So please come, let us fight the evil boss for you. And you will never have to worry about them exploiting you again." That is the standard union pitch. If you don't have a union, your job's going to exploit you. Every single time I've seen people, "Hey, you need to unionize because your boss is exploiting you." That's really, really great to drum up union membership. It's a phenomenally stupid thing to do if you want your bosses to agree to allow you to unionize. Now, there are laws that exist already that prevent businesses from doing certain things to discourage union formation. I don't think belonging to a union is a quote unquote right, but it is a protected choice that you can make. There are a bunch of laws that prevent businesses from doing things called union busting in certain situations. Doesn't mean that that businesses can't encourage their members not to unionize. It is extremely common because unions in general cost companies money. They always do. And I've seen, we have seen unions shut down businesses. There was a strike at, I think, Hostess or something like that, where they said, no, we're going to go on strike until you give us what we want. And they were just arguing for more, because they'd been unionized for a long time. And so the union went, "No, we're going to get even more money for you," in the middle of a recession. And Hostess just said, "Fuck you," and closed. The business went belly up. And everyone that belonged to the union lost their job. And then the rights to the trademarks and the recipes and everything got bought by another company that didn't have a union. Because it was a different company, the union can't just go, "Well, you bought this building and we used to have a union here, so you have to use our..." No. The new employees would have to go through the entire process of forming a new union. And they didn't, because it was really easy for the boss to go, "Yeah, you want to unionize? Great. Talk to the people that used to work here. They unionized. See what happened?" Because as much as the union said that there was unlimited money, there wasn't. And the union got too greedy, and it cost everyone their jobs. The first mistake that this dude made was pitching it as, "Hey, you need to talk to these dudes because they're going to make it so you have to treat us better." You don't pitch things like that. There are monetary incentives for a business like Crunchyroll to go union. There are quite a few. You pitch it differently, and it's a different conversation. hey, have you thought about going union? No, it'll cost us a lot of money. Well, technically, yes. Getting involved in the union, it's going to make things more difficult. One of the big problems is it means you're not allowed to hire non-union people, and that in itself it shrinks your potential employee pool by a significant amount, and that is always a bad thing for a business. You want a large potential employee pool, specifically because that means you don't have to keep bad employees. If you can't find someone else to do the job, then it doesn't matter how bad the employee is, because having a physical body in a position generally is preferable than having no one there at all, with a few very rare exceptions. So the larger your potential employee pool, the less bad employees you have to employ. And the more negotiation power that the business has in general, which is something that they're always going to want. Like it or hate it, they're always going to act in their best interest, and employees are always going to act in their best interest. So you don't pitch it as, oh, well, we're going to make sure you can't abuse us anymore. We're not abusing you now. Well, the union said you are. Well, the union's a bunch of jackasses. So you don't pitch it as that. You go, hey, have you thought about going union? Yeah, but it's going to cost us money, and we don't like how much reduced control we have over our hiring practices. Like, they take too much control from us. You're 100% right, and I totally understand that. However, there are a lot of benefits to going union. Probably one of the biggest is, yes, it closes down one aspect of your employee pool, but it opens you up to a very different one. And from a marketing perspective, at least for SAG AFTRA, I'm not saying all unions are like this, but SAG AFTRA is unique in unions. By the way, if anyone is wondering, I actually support SAG AFTRA. I think SAG AFTRA is 100% a necessary union, and I don't like unions. The entertainment industry, well, just overall, does not have the laws. There are not laws that govern that kind of work, and employees in the entertainment union simply do not have the protection of the law that literally every other industry does. So SAG AFTRA does have a necessary place to prevent exploitation and stuff like that, because there aren't laws that protect them. So I'm not saying SAG AFTRA is all bad. I'm also not saying they're all good. So when you pitch it, you're losing basically non-union members, but non-union members tend to be less experienced, because there's a lot less non-union jobs than there are union jobs. On purpose, SAG AFTRA is very good at what they do. And they're less known. And one of the most important thing in the entertainment industry is being able to sell your product. And one of the easiest ways to do that is attaching big names to it. Going union generally means you get access to bigger names. Now, bigger names come with bigger paychecks. So there's a little bit of give and take, but there's a lot to be gained by going union. It's one of the reasons why I'm 100% certain Crunchyroll will eventually go union. It's really not in their best interest to never go union. Right now, it's not a good time to go union. Especially with the dumb stuff that SAG AFTRA has done recently, which I won't get into, but But anyway, so it's just not a good idea for them to go union now. And it's definitely not a good idea to go union when one of your employees threatens you by saying, well, I'm not going to work for you if you don't do what I tell you to. The employees don't run the business. The employees shouldn't run the business. The employees can't run the business. People that have never worked management, have never run a business, do not understand how a business works. And they always undervalue how difficult it is to run a business, to manage a business. It is not something everybody can do. And when you don't understand how to run a business, you not only lose your job, you lose everybody's job underneath you. And you can lose everybody's job above you. Managers are one of the top reasons businesses close. Bad management closes businesses faster than literally everything else. So, um, so that was the kind of first mistake that he made was, well, if you don't, and the way that he pitches it in this, like, I didn't say they had to have a union contract. I said they had to sit down with SAG AFTRA. That's semantics. Um, as soon as you sit down with SAG AFTRA, um, if you don't give them what they want, they will tell their union members to not work for you. And so right now, obviously, Crunchyroll has been employing both union and non-union members. Um, I don't know how they've done that. Again, most union people, part of being a part of SAG, is they generally are not allowed to accept non-union work. And the few times that they do, they have to use different names and other stuff like that, and they're not allowed to accept certain kinds of pay. Like, it's a remarkably complicated process. So I don't know what agreement they had that allowed them to use both union and non-union members, or to use union members without signing a SAG contract. It might have just been, well, we'll pay you what SAG pays you. We'll do the stuff that they normally do. We just don't want to be under their contract. And that might have been the gentleman's agreement that SAG had, where it's like, well, we won't force our people to stop working with you as long as you pay them what we think that they should be paid, and you stick to basically being under the contract without actually having a written contract, which is significantly more beneficial for Crunchyroll than signing a contract. So as soon as they sit down, any sort of gentleman's agreement that they had, instantly gone. So no, he was not saying, well, I was just saying you need to sit down and talk, and if you guys can't come to a good agreement, then everybody's okay. No, as soon as you sit down at the table, SAG's going to start flexing their muscles, and you will lose every single union actor you have until you acquiesce to what they say. SAG is big, and SAG is very good at what they do. So that was their first mistake. You don't threaten your boss to join a union. And saying that I won't work for you is a threat. So never threaten your boss with a union. The second thing that he did is he overestimated how much SAG AFTRA cares about voice actors in anime dubs. They don't. Again, we remember what happened to during the voice actor strike. It became a really, really big deal. A lot of productions had to recast things because they couldn't use union members. I think Ashley Birch wasn't able to reprise her role in I can't remember. It's a Square Enix adventure game that Kiri played it and loved it, and it was amazing. And she even has a shirt that I absolutely love that says "Fuck the city" or "Fuck the town, save your girlfriend." It's a great series that I can't remember what it's called because, again, names are bad for me. But anyway, so that was a really, really big deal. SAG AFTRA's not going to do that to Crunchyroll. And not only that, but SAG AFTRA can't do that to Crunchyroll. They do not... Enough people work in the anime dubbing industry that are not SAG members that they do not have the power to put that kind of pressure on Crunchyroll. They just don't. I believe Crunchyroll... I think Crunchyroll has always operated out of Texas. Is either Crunchyroll or Funimation has always worked out of Texas. Dragon Ball Z was dubbed in Texas. So because Texas is not California, they've been able to get around a lot of union rules because SAG owns California. It owns the entertainment industry in California, and so you cannot work in California without using union. You just can't. They don't in Texas. They have very little power in Texas. And so after the merger, I believe both Crunchyroll and Funimation, the whole company, Sony owns them apparently, or part of Sony. Sony is weird in all the different subsidiaries of Sony that exist. But they've moved all production to Texas so they don't have to deal with SAG AFTRA, which was always something that they could do. And they just didn't for a while. Because I know for a while there were dubs that were being done in Los Angeles. They were using union actors and things like that. SAG does not have the power to force them to do anything, nor do they care enough about voice actors to do anything about it. Fun fact, the Power Rangers, one of my favorite shows in the world, was non-union until Hasbro bought it in 2018. They did not use union actors. Power Rangers was not great to their actors for large stints of, like, you got paid very, very poorly. You had really, really long work days, like 12 to 16-hour work days, 5 to 7 days a week. Like, you were working your ass off, getting paid next to nothing. So for years, Power Rangers was not a great place. Power Rangers started in 1993. And that was before the SAG AFTRA merger. So SAG would not have represented any of the Power Rangers. They would have been represented by AFTRA. They didn't care. In 2008, and I believe this had to be after the merger because I believe SAG had a hand in it. If it wasn't, one of the unions basically said, hey, we've been having members complaining about the conditions on your show. You need to fix them, or we're not going to allow our union people to work for it. Haim Saban, the guy that owned Power Rangers at the time, said, fuck you. We don't want to work with you. And Power Rangers became illegal if you were a SAG AFTRA member to work on Power Rangers. To the point where there were Power Rangers that started on Power Rangers, left because they get a new cast every other year roughly, got their SAG card, and then were asked to come back for a team up episode, which is really common with Power Rangers. Old Rangers would team up with new Rangers, and they weren't allowed to be credited under the regular name, and they weren't allowed to accept certain amounts of payment. Like, they had to get paid a smaller amount, because once it gets above a certain amount, it conflicts with their SAG contract. So from 1993 to 2008, these actors were being abused and just treated like absolute shit for 15 years. AFTRA did shit until finally, and the reason that Jason Trini and Zach, the red, yellow, and black Rangers, the original ones, left was because of pay disputes and the things like that. AFTRA did shit. Did not care about them one bit. It wasn't until 2008, 15 years later, that they did anything. And the only thing they did was said, well, we're not going to play with you anymore. And Power Rangers went on for another decade being non-union. It wasn't until, again, Hasbro bought them in 2018. I don't believe they're a closed shop. I believe they still, I believe some of the Dino Fury, which is the current season of Power Rangers, the Dino Fury Rangers are non-union, but I know for a fact the Red Ranger is a SAG AFTRA member. And I believe there's a few others as well. So SAG works with Power Rangers, mostly because it's owned by Hasbro and it's produced by Netflix, and Netflix likes SAG AFTRA. So of course they're going to play ball with them. So the second mistake this guy made was thinking that SAG AFTRA was going to go to bat for him. They weren't. They never were. I believe they've released a statement saying, we stand in solidarity, that means nothing. It's about as effective as me saying, I stand in solidarity with the Mob Psycho people. No one gives a flying fuck what I say. At all. I have no influence. Like, I don't even count as an actor to most people, because the last time I was acting was a decade ago, I think. The last show I did was The Odd Couple. I did The Odd Couple. It's a brilliant show. Absolutely loved it. That is the last time I did any acting, and it was well over a decade ago. Most quote-unquote actors would not consider me an actor, especially since I've been, as far as professional acting, I was a professional actor because I got paid once for a non-union job. that my agent got me. My agent was wonderful. My agent was much, much better to me than I deserved. I was a punk kid that thought I was the next best thing in acting, and I wasn't. Not then. I think now I've matured a lot as an actor, but then I wasn't. I was good, don't get me wrong. I wasn't amazing. Or I was good. I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I thought I was the next Robin Williams. I wasn't. I never will be. But anyway, so yeah, those are the two big mistakes that he made. Thinking that his union was going to have his back. They won't. And threatening his company. The company is always going to go, fuck you. Who are you to tell us that we're bad people? No. The best way to make change is you need to approach your employer as if you are trying to help them, not that you are trying to help yourself. It will never, ever go union. If SAG AFTRA does decide to escalate, all that will do is make Crunchyroll lean harder into using non-union members. Because, again, what SAG AFTRA is going to say is, these people are abusing they're basically going to be saying, you're bad, and we're going to stop you from being bad, so you should pay us for that. Doesn't work. Never works that way. So if SAG AFTRA wants to try and do this as a publicity stunt to make it look like they care about their actors, all it'll do is make it worse. 100%. That's all it'll do is make it worse. Because again, they operate out of a different state. They don't have to use union members. They don't have to pay them what SAG pays them. People are allowed to accept any pay that they want as long as it is not doesn't factor below federal minimum wage, or some states have state minimum wages as well. But the only laws that they have to follow are state and federal regulations as far as labor laws are concerned. Union rules don't matter at all. So yeah, it was never going to work. I understand why he did it. He believes very strongly that SAG AFTRA is good for him, is good for other people, and he was trying to help other voice actors. That is a noble thing. But you can be as noble as you want and still do a remarkably stupid thing, which is what he did. And it cost him a job. Now, do I think that this person's never going to work again? Fuck no! Again, I might have seen things that he's in. I didn't recognize his name. So it's very possible I've seen things that he's in. And it's possible I enjoy his things. I don't know what he's done off the top of my head. But with the response that I've seen, he's not going to have a hard time getting work. He's just not going to get it in anime dubbing. Which may affect his career. Again, if the entertainment industry is extremely cliquey. Again, I've talked about there used to be this huge animosity between TV actors and movie actors. The animosity still kind of exists, but because so many movie actors are going to TV and so many TV actors are going to movie, the animosity just isn't there as much as it used to be. Like in the 90s, it was a really big deal. Before the merger of SAG AFTRA, it was huge. They had separate unions and everything. There still is animosity between Broadway performers and film actors, just in general. Both TV and movies. There is a decent amount of animosity because theater actors contend that theater acting is real because you have to do it all in one take. You don't get multiple takes. You have a live audience in front of you, and every mistake that you make, they're going to see and they're going to react to. So that's real acting. You have to do everything all at once. Whereas film actors will contend, no. Broadway and theater acting in general is overacting nonsense. One of the things a lot of people don't realize is theater acting and film acting are two actual different styles of acting, and you do different things. In theater acting, because you will play to even small theaters, you still have to get the emotions that you're expressing to someone that is 100, 200 feet away minimum. And that requires you to emote louder and emote stronger than you would in a film. And there's certain things you can do in film acting that you simply can't do on stage. A lot of facial expressions don't translate well to theater acting. You have to have bigger expressions. Everything has to be bigger on theater because people are watching you from hundreds of feet away. Movie acting, the camera can get right up to you. They can see a single twitch of your eye. They can see everything. They can see your sight lines. They can see absolutely everything. So film actors will contend that stage acting is overacting nonsense. Film acting is real because they actually have to emulate real emotions. The camera gets so close and the audience gets so intimate with the actor that any acting that they do has to be pure, has to be real. So there's this huge animosity between, or not huge, it's gotten better recently because, again, people are going between things. But there's still this animosity between them. And there's animosity between every single thing. Again, live action actors don't tend to interact with voice actors. Kids television doesn't tend to interact with adult television. Like, there's all these different cliques and things like that. And the Screen Actors Guild uses that against them, as all unions do. Again, I think Screen Actors Guild is a good union. I think it's a necessary union. I don't think it's... let me rephrase that. I think it's a necessary union. I don't think it's good. Again, I'm relatively anti-union because I've been a part of it, and I know a lot more than most people do because I had to learn it. For my degree. So I'm generally not a big fan of unions now. I'm not saying unions have never been good. If you come into there, well, unions are the reason we have a 40-hour work week. Yeah, unions are the reasons we have 40-hour work weeks. Unions are responsible for overtime pay. They're responsible for hazard pay. They're responsible for sick pay, child labor laws, 5-day work weeks, labor laws in general were written by unions. So 100% unions have done amazing things that have made your life easier. However, unions have also been involved in some of the largest corruption in the history of business. Unions in Chicago had mob ties for years and years and years and years and years. Back turn of the century, unions would murder scabs, basically people, when the union went on strike and people went in to get the jobs, riots would happen and people would get murdered over it. Like, unions are not the squeaky clean thing that they say that we fight for the work. No, they've done some horrible shit. It just so happens that a lot of the good things that they fought for eventually got turned into laws. And because those laws exist, the unions aren't really necessary for 90% of jobs. Again, cashiers don't need a union. Trust me on this one. I've done my research. They don't need it. The Screen Actors Guild is a necessary union. Laws have not caught up with the entertainment industry. It is such a unique form of work that I'm not sure they can write laws that are really going to be able to protect actors without exploiting other people that work in similar things. California's been trying to write laws that help what are called independent contractors, and every single law that they've written has done nothing but hurt independent contractors. Every one of them. So it is a remarkably complicated thing to do, and so SAG AFTRA fills a need. But I don't think for a minute that they're going to go that they're going to go to bat for this one actor, or even all actors of anime, because they just don't care about it. It doesn't make them money. They don't get a lot of union members from that field, and if they do, they're not going to get a lot out of dues from them. It's just not in their best interest. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand about unions, is unions do not work for employees, they work for the union. And what is best for the union generally does not help all employees. Like, there will never be a union that is able to do the best for all their employees. They're generally going to do what is best for their most important employees. That's why football coaches in high school don't get fired, no matter how bad they are at their job, whereas music teachers get their budgets cut and their salaries cut over and over and over again until they quit. Music programs get closed all the time in public schools, which are run almost entirely by unions, due to licensing and things, licensing requirements and stuff like that. Teachers' unions are extremely powerful. Again, most of my friends in high school, the theater majors or most of my friends in college, the theater majors, there weren't many of us. I think when I was going there, there was a grand total of, I think, a dozen theater majors, which was not enough to cast a single show. Like, we never had a show that we did that was entirely theater majors and minors. We always had music majors and minors joining us in general for every single show that we did. We also got English majors and other things that came in as well. There just weren't many of us. What there was a lot of, at least in my friend group, were music majors. And about, I want to say 70% of my friends that were music majors, it was very rare to find music performance majors. Because music performance majors is almost a wasted degree, because having a degree in music performance is worthless. Your degree does absolutely nothing to get you, like, if you decide that you want to join, like, the London Philharmonic. They really don't care where you went to school. They care, can you play? And so the most it might do is you might be able to get an audition with a really prestigious thing like the London Philharmonic, when you might not have been able to. But if you are a good enough player, you're going to get a job. So music performance majors, generally, if they were a music performance major, the reason they were getting it had nothing to do with the piece of paper they were getting, and everything to do with whomever was teaching at the school. And we had some really, really great professors in the music department in general. My voice teacher, Dr. Hooper was his name, is his name. I don't think he teaches anymore, but he still does music stuff. He's amazing. He taught me so much. One of the reasons I am as talented a vocalist as I am now, or skilled a vocalist as I am, is because he taught me so much in the 2 years that I learned from him. He was amazing. I loved him. So anyway, so a lot of my friends were music education majors, which eventually turned into music teachers, and they all fucking hate their unions, with a few rare exceptions. A few of them are like, no, my union's been good to me. For the most part, the union shits on music teachers, because music programs do not make money for schools. They cost money. Now, from they've done studies. Music programs in general, actually, kids that play instruments score higher in standardized tests. Like, they do actually, in a roundabout way, are very, very beneficial for schools. Like, every school needs to have a music program. Every student should learn how to play a musical instrument. If they can. There's some people that are just physically incapable of doing it. But for the most part, it's a very, very good idea to learn to play an instrument. And it will help you in school and a bunch of other things. So, yes, music programs are absolutely beneficial for schools, and schools cut them constantly because music programs themselves don't make money. Football programs make lots of money. Boosters give money back to the school. They tend to give money for football programs or hockey programs or sports programs in general. You know, they make money. Music programs are extremely expensive to run. Fun fact: a wooden bassoon costs anywhere between $80,000 to $120,000 for a single bassoon. And if you have kids that they don't own it, they're because most bassoons are going to be owned by the school, not by the kids. They're not going to treat it very right. Repair costs are really, really high because they're very complex instruments. And then, 3 to 5 years later, you got to buy a new one. So just that alone, $80,000 out of the school's budget going to a single instrument. And that's just one instrument. Vibes are, cheap vibes are a few $1,000s. Decent vibes are going to, vibraphone, if you know what I'm talking about, go tens of thousands of dollars. Generally, especially once you get to high school, most smaller instruments the students own. Like I still have my sax. I have an unlacquered tenor that's, what is it? I think it was $5,000 to $8,000 for that. I got it as a present. My parents did not pay $5,000 to $8,000 for it. They had a payment plan for it. So they paid monthly for my saxophone. I also have an alto. I think my alto is a cheap one. It only costs like $1,000 because it's a beginner horn. And then I had a clarinet that's older than dirt. It's worth about $1,000. So that is just 3 instruments, and those 3 instruments in total cost $10,000. So anyway, back to the idea of unions. Yeah, unions do not care about all of their employees. They care about the important ones. And the important ones are generally the ones that make the most money. And I do not know. I've not looked into. I'm not even sure if the uh, if SAG AFTRA has ever actually released all their monetary statements or things like that. I don't know how the law worked. For my research, I was able to find an article where they did most of the investigations for me, so I didn't have to physically go out and look for tax forms and stuff from all these different unions. They had all the tax forms and most of them there. It was really nice. So I have no idea how they use their money. And I also have no idea if, because for some odd reason, I think the law expired and wasn't renewed. So I don't think unions have to reveal where their money goes anymore. So I have no idea if most of SAG AFTRA's money goes towards paying their union reps and lobbying. Like I said, the vast majority of other unions, that is entirely where your union dues go. And that's it. You don't get better... you don't generally get better I can't remember what it's called, health and dental and stuff like that. It's a little better, yeah. You don't generally get that much better pay. It's a little better, yeah. It's enough to be noticeable, but it's not enough to offset the significantly larger amount that they take out of your paycheck. Like I said, non-right to work states, your dues are generally anywhere between 20 and 60% higher than right to work states. So, yeah, in non-right to work states, they do less work, they charge you more for it, and they give you less benefits than in right to work states because they don't have to be better. And so this whole thing with all the drama and everyone's like, oh, Crunchyroll is just horrible, disgusting. They're not. They did exactly what they should have done. Don't let your employees bully you into making bad decisions. Joining SAG AFTRA and going pure union is not a good idea for Crunchyroll right now. It's just not. It will cut their employee pool. It will force them to give up a lot of the control that they have over the product that they make to a group that simply does not care about them. SAG AFTRA does not give two shits about Crunchyroll. They do not care what they're making. They do not care about their employees. They care about making money so that they can get the people that they really care about, movie stars and TV stars that are making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per episode. Those are the people they actually care about. They do not care about whomever is doing the voice of Gotenks. They don't. They never have. And it's not in their best interest to care about them. It's in their best interest to cast as wide a net as they can, because the more people that belong to the union, the more power that they have. But they are always going to care mostly about the people that make them the most money. And that's not dub people. So, like I said, starting Monday, we're going back to D&D stuff. But one of my D&D players wanted me to make this video. I hope this has made sense. I know I ramble a lot. Part of it's because of how my brain works. But I hope this explains a little bit better why this is not evil corporation taking advantage of these poor unfortunate. It's not. The guy specifically said, no, they're paying me the exact same amount that I would get from SAG AFTRA. So this isn't about money. This is about I like SAG AFTRA. So this isn't Crunchyroll cutting costs or anything. This is Crunchyroll going, oh, you're going to threaten us and call us bad people, and somehow we're supposed to do what you want. You're going to bully us into doing it. Okay, you go ahead and do that. All right, we're gonna go use all these other people that haven't worked and would give their left testicle to get a job. We'll go work with them. You go ahead and do what you want. Yes, you go. That's what it was. And again, I don't think the actor that, again, I can't remember his name, I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he did something stupid. Which it doesn't mean I think he is stupid. He did something wrong. He made a mistake. He failed. That doesn't mean that he is a failure. He can use this, and I hope he does. I hope he learns He uses this as a learning experience because I would love to see Crunchyroll go union. Again, I like SAG AFTRA. I'm just not disillusioned into the idea to thinking that they're some kind of saints. They're not, but they're a necessary union. They have their place, and when they are doing their job, they do it very, very well. The problem is they don't always do their job, which is true about everything. So, you take what you can, you take it in. So I hope he learns from this. If you are watching this, again, I apologize that I cannot remember your name. Second of all, you really, really need to make better choices, because there's a lot better things you could do with your life than listen to me ramble about nonsense for an hour and 20 minutes. So if you are watching this, thank you. I appreciate it. But I hope this is something that you can use as a learning experience. And I really would like to see this approach in a much better way, using effectively bullying tactics, which is, I'm going to tell everyone that this is happening so that you get a lot of public pressure, doesn't ever work out well. Even if you get what you want, it'll be done with resentment, and it generally will get a black mark put on you. In any other business, you wouldn't work again for between 3 to 5 years if you did something like this. In the entertainment industry, again, it's very cliquey and stuff like that, so it works. Everything works differently in the entertainment industry, especially in Hollywood. Everything works differently. But any other business in the world, if you did something like this, you wouldn't work for 3 to 5 years in the industry. That's just how it is. Because people would see, yes, this guy likes to make trouble for companies and he costs companies money. There's no way in hell I'm ever going to hire this person. So if you want to use bullying tactics, they're very effective if you have the power to actually go through or to actually go through with your threat. You didn't. Or technically you did. You quit. But at the same time, I mean, technically you didn't. You just didn't get offered your job. And, even if you did quit, it didn't hurt them in any way, shape, or form. So, SAG AFTRA is not going to go to bat for you. If they do, it won't be to help you. It'll be to probably put more money in their union reps' pockets and to get better deals for movie stars. Because those are the people that make the money. It sucks, but that's how it is. They really don't care about the little guys. They never have. No union does, to be perfectly honest. That's not how they were formed. That's not why they were formed. So yeah. Anyway, like I said, Monday I'm going to go back to D&D stuff. So for people that don't really enjoy this stuff, I apologize. But again, one of my D&D players wanted this video made, and I'm starting to feel really bad that I hadn't. So yeah, I hope this answers a few people's questions. Feel free to ask more questions and stuff in the comments. I reply to every comment that I can. I'm nowhere near big enough to the point where I can't respond to almost all my comments, if not all of them. It's just whether or not my anxiety is causing issues that day or not. So anyway, again, that's all for me. I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.